Pitt football's first bye week has come and gone of the 2024 season, and they are currently riding a 4-0 record as they transition into ACC play with North Carolina on tap this coming Saturday. Welcome into the Pittsburgh Sports Now Pulse. I'm Nathan Breisinger, joined alongside by our Pittsburgh Sports Now Pitt football beat writer, Karl Ludwig. And Karl, got to start off this show, obviously, with one of the more pressing topics of the week. Some news we were hit with yesterday from head coach Pat Narduzzi, and some positive personnel news that running back Rodney Hammond, who was declared ineligible, a day before the season started against Kent State, is now back eligible and available against North Carolina as the Panthers look to go 5-0 and continue this undefeated start to the 2024 season. So obviously some huge news, Karl. I mean, what was it like, hearing that news, and what does this do for this Pitt team?
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, it's a surprise. I mean, I don't think anyone thought he'd be back. I think he was announced as ineligible for the entire 2024 game season. He was still with the team, he was still practicing, but we didn't think he'd be around to help out or to contribute at all. And he left the room pretty thin depth wise. I mean, we had an unproven Desmond Reed, we had an older Daniel Carter, Derek Davis, Jules Goff, Montrevious Lloyd, but in the 4 games that Rodney's missed, I mean, we've kind of gotten a room that's much deeper than we anticipated. I mean, Desmond Reed has been one of the best all-purpose players in the country. I think he's still third in rushing, second in all-purpose yards in the ACC. He's a smaller guy, of course, but he's someone who's tough. He's lightning quick, and I think Rodney will be a great complement to that. Rodney isn't the fastest running back, but he has awesome vision. He can cut on a dime. His lateral movement is what you want to see from NFL type players. So I think I'm not sure how active he'll be against UNC just because he hasn't played a game since last November against Duke, but I think we'll get him 5-10 touches, 5-10 carries against UNC, maybe a catch or two, kind of work him back into the rotation. And Desmond doesn't have to be the guy who's a 3-down back and takes 25, 30 touches a game, because it didn't work out through 4 games. And he could have played against Youngstown State, but took a breather. He's healthy now. Rodney's back. You still have Daniel Carter, and Jay Wabuko. He's also maybe in line for more touches too. So this is a unit now it's pretty deep. There's a clear number one, I think, in Desmond Reed. He must continue to be the number one guy, but Rodney's back and he'll have his touches. Daniel Carter isn't just that goal line back anymore, and Jay Wabuko might be the fastest player in the team, without mentioning Jules Goff, who is back healthy now, and Montrevious Lloyd, who's looked good in his limited reps so far in college.
And Rodney Hammond, I mean, coming into the season, we kind of expected him to sort of be the number one guy, a senior. Didn't know a whole ton about Desmond Reed. Knew he was, a big addition for the offense coming from the FCS level, but you didn't know how things would transition from that level up to the Power 4. And Hammond's an all-around back that can be a goal line back. We've seen, the type of punch he can have. First thing that comes to my mind is the 2022 Backyard Brawl, where he scores 2 goal line touchdowns with the help of the offensive line. But that's the type of back he is. But also, as you mentioned, Karl, he can cut quickly on a dime. So you get that nice mix and blend from Hammond, and he's a guy that you kind of expected to officially have a breakout season this year. I mean, he sort of hovered right around the 500-yard mark through his first 3 seasons. 504 yards in his freshman campaign, then dipped to 460 in 2022, but that's the year that Izzy Abanikanda had a big year for the Panthers. And then last year sort of split time with Sibo Flemister, and kind of a little bit of a interesting, combination there. You thought Hammond would get a lot more touches, but he didn't. And this year was kind of like, okay, this is a year he could really get towards 1,000 yards, depending on what type of touches he was going to get. But again, no one really knows exactly why he was held out to begin with. No one really knows what happened to being out for the whole season, and now was only cut back to 4 games and was allowed to play after Pitt's first bye. But, I mean, this really brings just another layer, as you wrote on PittsburghSportsNow.com, to this offense as a whole, from Eli Holstein, the pass game. Now he's an option out of the backfield for Holstein, as well as someone that they can hand the ball off to.
Absolutely. I mean, he's a very talented running back. His usage at times in his pick here has been kind of confusing. Last year was I don't think anyone can really explain what happened last year with him and the offense as a whole, but I'm excited to see him play in a Cade Bell offense. I'm excited to see him utilized as a runner and as a receiver. He's done both in his time. When called upon in big moments, he has delivered. You mentioned the backyard brawl in 22. When starting in 22 with AZ on the shelf, he played well. Couple 100-yard games, multi touchdown games. He's a very talented player, and I think he has kind of gone from an afterthought now to a potential a second star in the running back room. I think him and Desmond Reed can be a very productive duo together. They have very complementary games. They don't have to be the bell cow backs, either one of them. They can share time, maybe a bit heavier split for Desmond Reed, but I think Rodney is a perfect complement here. I think they'll it's a little bit of thunder and lightning in a way. You can bring in Rodney for those short yardage situations where you might need 3 or 4 yards on third down and let him run, let him cut and dash to the first down marker. So I think it'll be a very productive duo, and that's not even mentioning Daniel Carter and Chiwabuko and Jules Goff and Montrevious Lloyd. So I think the running back room is going to go on from a question mark to an area of strength, which is kind of how the entire offense has gone. Lots of playmakers, lots of production, and Rodney Hammond is just another piece now to work back into the puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, you look at every position on the offense, skill position, receivers, they're deep there, about 4 or 5 guys. Tight ends, you have Bartholomew and Overman, and even Malachi Thomas, who was a All-American freshman nominee to start the year, really hasn't seen a lot of playing time, but is an option if you want to throw to him, which now you're sort of at the point of trying not to burn red shirts if you don't want to burn those after 4 games. But this offense, I mean, we've seen the revelation it's become under Cade Bell, fifth in the country in points per game at 48.5 points per game, and then seventh in just overall yardage with 522 yards per game. So I mean, this offense gets another piece at its disposal as I don't know who put it out there, but it's just another toy for Cade Bell to use in this offense. I mean, Cade Bell has drawn it up perfectly, and he's allowed his playmakers to go make plays. So Hammond should fit in very nicely. Obviously, as you mentioned, Carl, it's going to take maybe a little bit longer. Maybe not this week where we're going to see him sort of become, 10 touchback, and beyond, but start to work him in, which will be nice for the Pitt offense. Now, in other personnel news, Pat Narduzzi also mentioned some other guys that are returning from injury. Desmond Reed is good to go, and he's expected to be your starter at running back. Jules Goff, who has been working with a cast on one of his forearms, arms, hand. It is looks like he's going to be good to go if they want to use him. But now with Hammond back, I mean, really don't know as a freshman if he'll get any sort of playing time. But the big news is PJ O'Brien will be out for the first half with his targeting call being carried over from the Youngstown State game. So sort of see more of Cruz Brookins. What do you sort of expect to see from Cruz in the secondary for this one?
Yeah, so obviously PJ has been a spot starter this year. He's kind of rotated a bit with Donovan and Javon McIntyre. But Cruz Perkins has a major chance now. He's going to play a lot in the first half. He'll play boundary and field. He likes playing boundary more. He's a big hitter. He has the pick this year, but he loves to hit people. He's a downhill, hard-nosed football player. And I think he's too talented to keep off the field. I mean, he's been playing the Delta package as that nickelback, but I think he's too talented to not play. He's young, hasn't played a whole lot. I think he has 83 snaps this season, 55 in the base, as Corey Sanders mentioned. But um, there's a chance for him to come in now and to take an actual spot in this rotation, which could be turned into a foursome. He was a breakout star in the spring. He won the Ed Conway Award of Most Improved Defensive Player. He didn't slow down in the summertime. I think he had like eight takeaway stickers on his helmet. He's made plays. He's a big hitter. And whenever you mention Cruz Brookins to anyone in the facility, it's always the same answer of, oh, he's a football player. He's super talented. His time is coming, and I think his time is now. I think we'll see him kind of. I think we'll see him kind of play well off of Javon as that field linebacker or the field safety, but he'll play both. I think he'll flash his downhill hard hitting ability. And PJ will play in the second half. I think we'll see all four safeties play throughout the game, but I think Cruz has a chance there to really kind of make an impression and to show that he's not just a Delta package player. He's a guy who can come in and play big moments against big ACC opponents.
And about 2 weeks into the fall camp, Pat Narduzzi had said that Brookins is a type of guy that he can be from your fourth safety all the way down to your second safety. So, I mean, just talked about the flexibility of the safeties as a whole. So, yeah, we get to see Brookins, who has basically played in Delta for the most part, and very sparingly in the base defense. Um, but yeah, we'll have a huge opportunity in this one and in a area of the defense that is super deep with four options at safety is very big for the Panthers, which for in years past has not been an option. So that's a big thing for the Panthers. And but now we need to talk about some areas that have struggled. What are some areas, Karl, coming in after 4-0, after your first four games, you get a bye week. What are some areas or an area of this Pitt team that you need to see some improvement from?
Well, I think line play offensively and defensively is still a question mark. The offensive line has been it's there the pieces are there. There's room for improvement, but there's too many pressures allowed in pass protection. I think you mentioned they've been allowing three-ish sacks per game this season. A lot of pressures, especially off the edge, and that just can't happen. When you have a unit like this, that's more of a veteran unit now with a lot of starts coming back. You got to shore up the pass protection, and I know there's some talented players at running back, and Eli Holstein's mobile, but it got to be more push on the offensive line up front. And the same kind of goes for the defensive line as well. There's been some pressures. I mean, I know there's a guy like Nate Matlack getting a lot of pressures. He's in the backfield a lot. You hear his name a lot, but there hasn't been enough consistent getting home to the quarterback and finishing those tackles for loss and bringing down the quarterback. And it starts on the outside. Um, I think Jimmy Scott's been playing pretty well. I think Nate Matlack played pretty well too. But you have to have more consistent pressure and the push on the interior of the offense and the defensive line. Nick James has been pretty solid. Nikai Johnson's been okay, but there hasn't. There's the goal is to have less than 100 yards rushing per game. I think they're at 110 right now, helped a little bit by Youngstown State, but West Virginia and Cincinnati were when they wanted to run the football, they could run the football well. I think it was might not have been the best yards per carry, but they racked up yards and they confounded Pat Narduzzi's defense, and that has to change going forward. Obviously, they have a very tough opponent and Amari and Hampton against UNC might be the best back they've faced all season, and maybe it can be helped by potential return of Sean Fitzsimmons at D tackle. He's been mentioned a lot since he arrived. He's has high expectations. Hasn't played yet this season. I think he's going to this week. Um, but they have to figure out how to stop the run, how to limit those mental mistakes and to fulfill those run assignments, which it's been spotty so far through four games.
And Fitzsimmons is really like the only D tackle that was a bona fide starter coming into this year with just all the transition. Nikai Johnson wasn't even at D tackle to start, sort of spring, and then he moved in from D end. So it'd be nice to see if he can get on the field against North Carolina. If not, eventually next home game against Cal. But yeah, this Pitt D line has been, obviously, I mean they're trying to live up to the standard of the past under Charlie Partridge. Tim Dowse, new D line coach, trying to get these guys very young group as well. But I've been impressed by Jimmy Scott on the end, redshirt sophomore, so he's still pretty young. He's got a lot of improving to do, but I think he's looked solid so far. I'd like to see more out of Nate Matlack. I mean, he was brought in. I mean, he wasn't a star at Kansas State, but I mean, he has the ability to be quick off that edge. He's a taller, sort of skinnier end, and he just, as you mentioned, Karl, just some of these guys been unable to put it all together and finish plays. I mean, there was a play against Cincinnati. Can't remember exactly when it was, but he had a chance to get back there against Sorsby and could not wrap him up. So just plays like those that you need to finish. That's what you would like to see against for the D line, and then yeah, the offensive line, of course. Still a lot to go there as well. So far so good in terms of health. These guys. You're getting some chemistry together, staying together. Obviously Ryan Jacoby, Jason Collier, and at left guard have been flipping back and forth, but it seems like Jacoby should be pretty much healthy and ready to go as well. But yeah, luckily for them, Holstein is so good at escaping pressure that like maybe those numbers could be a lot worse. I mean, we talk about 3 sacks per game, which is 116th in FBS, one of the worst teams in terms of allowing sacks. But I mean, Holstein has been able to feel that pressure and get out of there a lot better than we sort of expected coming into this year. So that those are two areas I agree definitely need to improve. I think cornerbacks, we're starting to see them come together a little bit better. Um, Rashad Battle, Tamarian Crumpley had a big pick six against Youngstown State, Lynham, and of course Gandy. So we'll see because UNC is a very explosive team. So I mean, let's transition into that now. A place Pitt has never won, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. The last 2 seasons against the Tar Heels, the Pitt has allowed 40 plus points per game. So that's sort of what you're going to expect. And obviously, I mean, the Tar Heels are coming off of 2 tough losses. I mean, that's a James Madison game that you can't lose, and they lost 70-50, but they still put up 50 points. But it sort of became a boat race, right from the jump. And then UNC was up by 20 points against a heated rival in Duke, and then you fall 21-20. So, I mean, they're going to play with a chip on their shoulder, but it's a team that has an explosive offense, and Pitt has to be ready for it.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the back-to-back losses, 50 points allowed, but there is Drake May is in the NFL now. He's not coming back this season. He's been a bit of a pit killer last 2 seasons. UNC quarterbacks in general have been kind of pit killers, but they're down to number 3 right now with Jacoby Criswell. Talented player, real dual threat kind of guy, but he's a kind of he's a risk taker, and it's paid off with 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions so far this season. But the real threat to worry about this week is Amarian Hampton, their star running back. He leads the ACC in rushing yards. He has the most touches in the country, and he's not just a runner. He will catch. I think he has 12 catches this season. They'd love to use him out on the flats, give him the ball in space, and let him run. So it's a big game for the linebacking core. Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles will have to be sturdy. They'll have to be very precise in their assignments and location on the field. They'll have to wrap him up well. He's a very stout guy, 6 foot 220. So you can't just come in and expect to knock him on the ground with a shoulder tackle. You have to wrap him up, bring him down, and do it for a full 60 minutes because he will have a lot of touch. I think he had 35 touches against Duke, probably around the same against JMU. I mean, he will have the ball a lot. And that's with the threat of him, you also have the threat of the downfield game where they have some explosive receivers. So the CBs will be tested, especially deep down the field and the sidelines, and then the D line and the linebackers will have to show that they can handle a 30 carry performance from Amari and Hampton on the road in a place they haven't won before ever. So it's a tall task, but I think Pitt can handle it if the bye week adjustments have been made and have been taken from the classroom onto the field. No more mental mistakes, no more missed assignments. You have to wrap up the play. You have to wrap up the playmakers. And if they can't do that, then I think we'll see another huge performance from Amari and Hampton.
Yeah, Pitt against North Carolina, the Tar Heels have just been one of those teams that have been a thorn in the side of the Panthers ever since they've joined the ACC, not even under Pat Narduzzi. They won the last 2 meetings. Then Pitt had one in 21 and 2019 in overtime victories at Heinz Field. And then from there, it's been all UNC from 2013 to 18 and a lot of one-score games. You look back on this matchup. So, but yeah, the key is squarely on stopping Amari and Hampton because Pitt has seen some strong running backs and Kiner from Cincinnati, CJ Donaldson and Jaheim White. They were able to shut them down for the most part, especially in that second half of the brawl. But this is Pitt has to set the tone in this one for ACC play. I mean, they're feeling good riding 4-0, first 4-0 starts since 2000. But it really doesn't matter now, those past 4 games. All it is ACC play from here on out. And it starts with a North Carolina team that has just been so tough to beat And again, 0-7 all time at Kenan Stadium in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So this one's going to be a big one. And I know Mac Brown, the head coach, their longtime head coach, one of the best college football head coaches ever, a national champion winner. Um, but I mean, he was extremely frustrated with the James Madison loss. And then, of course, with the Duke let down after they were ahead for a majority of that game. So, I mean, there's going to be a lot riding on this game for both teams. UNC trying to get back right and getting back in the win column after these last 2 weeks. And then Pitt, I mean, really, this is a huge momentum game on the road to try to continue that and come back home against Cal with a win.
Absolutely. And UNC is not a bad football team. It may not. They're coming off a tough stretch here. Mac Brown's kind of been in the fire a little bit with his comments about potentially retiring midseason. He said he won't now. He's going to finish the year. Might be his last year, but this is a team that can score points. Um, and I know the 70 points against JMU stands out. That's a massive number. It wasn't just offense from JMU. There were some miscues on offense, a pick six, a blocked punt. So it's not like the defense is just horrible. They did hold Duke to 21 points. Second half collapsed, but Pitt has to be ready. Pitt has to go in there and expect to have the UNC teams of old. They have to expect Chris Wall to play like Drake May. They have to expect Hampton to go for 200 yards. Um, they have to expect a tough game because it will be a tough game, especially riding a 4-0 start. The expectations now are super high. A win and you're ranked. You have the national spotlight on you heading into a huge match against Cal. Um, it's going to be a battle, but I think Pitt is equipped to win this game. And if Pitt plays the way it's capable of playing, I think Pitt can win by a decent kind of I don't want to say easy margin, but I think Pitt is well equipped to take this game and to run with it and kind of show that this team is legitimate. This team can win games against ACC opponents. It can beat Big 12 teams. They can handle business against inferior teams in the FCS. So I think if the Panthers kind of do their jobs, if they practice what they preached all week and all throughout the bye week, then this is a team that Pitt should be able to take down with relative. I don't want to say ease, but they should win the game, and it shouldn't be much of a contest.
And as history has sort of tended to repeat itself, I expect this to be a one-score game. I think North Carolina will try to keep it close for the most part. Um, but I'm thinking you're looking at a 34-27 win from the Panthers. Again, one score. It's going to be pretty close, but I think Pitt is going to have the edge. I think Holstein, the big thing for him is he's protected the ball pretty well. Obviously 2 interceptions, I think at this point in the season, correct?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
two
mean,
interceptions.
but I think he's grown. We've talked about it so much. He's grown so much over the course, not even just games, but in terms of quarters and halves within a game. So I think he's come in. He's going to be super mature after the bye week. So I think he's going to protect the ball a little bit more and still allow this offense to be successful. And another thing for this Pitt football team that I pointed out last time we recorded on the Pittsburgh Sports Now Pulse was Pitt's record after a bye week under Pat Narduzzi. They are 9-3, but since 2018 they are 8-1, and all time they're 6-1 under head coach Narduzzi. So I mean he's gotten his team ready to play after bye weeks, and this is another opportunity against a North Carolina team that's been down the last couple of weeks. They're coming off of a rivalry game where they probably had a lot of emotions let out, especially following the James Madison game. So it's another opportunity for Pitt to pull in a win and continue this undefeated start. But that's going to do it for us on this edition of the Pittsburgh Sports Now Football Pulse. Be sure to check out all our content over on PittsburghSportsNow.com, as we'll have live coverage throughout the North Carolina matchup on Saturday. So for Karl Ludwig, I'm Nathan Breisinger. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Pittsburgh Sports Now Football Pulse.